Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Beagle is excused. Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Present.
Councilmember Behrman.
Present.
Councilmember Gotcha. Councilmember Grunlin Fox.
Here.
Councilmember Sharp.
Present.
Councilmember Smiley.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Any changes or additions to the agenda? City Manager?
I have no changes, sir.
Assistant City Manager Benson?
I have none, sir.
Any from the dais? All right, and one point of order we're going to do is we will, at the first call to the public, after the presentation by Mr. Whitley on the SPURT operations, the public will be able to come up and say their piece, and I'll lay out the rules to the call to the public, and then we'll do question and answers at that time. So we're going to let him do his presentation first, though. But first presentation for tonight, we have two of them. It is the presentation of the fiscal year 2023-2024 City of Wixom Financial Audit. All right, we have members from Plant Moran here today.
Good evening. My name is Martin Olenek. I'm the partner on the engagement for the audit, and with me is James Hopalak, who was the manager. There's a few documents that you have that were distributed. There's 3 in total. One is the financial statement. As I always say, don't worry, we're not going to go page by page through that document. It's only about 65 pages or so. James is going to go through the graphs, which are going to essentially display everything that's kind of like the highlights from the financial statements. I did want to point out one thing is that on page 1 and 2 is the opinion letter, which is the only document or portion of the document that belongs to Plant Moran. And in that opinion letter, it's essentially an unmodified opinion, which notes that based on our testing and everything that we've done, you can rely on the numbers as you're setting budgets, et cetera. So based on all the testing that we've done. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to James to go through the graphs. Following the presentation for that, I will go through the post-audit letter just to kind of let you know how the process itself went. If there's any questions or anything throughout the presentations, feel free to let us know. You can stop us throughout, or we can just answer all the questions at the end, whatever's preferred. So with that, James.
Thank you. So, as Martin mentioned, the city received an unmodified opinion, which is the highest form of assurance achievable. A couple other highlights that we'll touch on real quick here on this first slide is the unassigned fund balance in the general fund was approximately $5.7 million. General fund expenses for 2024, including transfers out, were about $13.4 million. The city invested about $8.8 million in city infrastructure, machinery, and equipment, and that includes both governmental and business type activity funds. The pension system finished the year at 85% funded, and the retiree healthcare system is over 100% funded as of 6/30/24. So jumping into some of the numbers here, this slide is the general fund's revenue for the year ended June 30th. You can see the different breakouts of revenue have been pretty consistent throughout the past 5 years. In 2024, total general fund revenue increased by about $1.25 million from the previous year. Most of that increase related to property taxes, which increased about $632,000, or roughly 7% from the previous year. Jumping into the general fund expenditures. So this slide here shows the general fund expenditures for the year. Total general fund expenditures increased approximately $500,000 from the prior year. However, when we include transfers out, the totals were roughly $3 million less than the prior year due to less transfers out. As you can see in the expenditure groupings on the slide, they were pretty consistent with the historical trends, with not too much change other than that transfers out grouping that I just mentioned. This slide here is a quick snapshot of the revenue and expenditures over the past 5 years compared to unrestricted fund balance, which is the sum of the unassigned, assigned, committed, and non-spendable fund balances. You can see pretty consistent trends from year to year, other than 2019, which had significant pension and OPEB contribution activity. As you can see in 2024, the city moved back to having more revenue than expenditures, increasing their fund balance by about $2.2 million. This slide here is a quick depiction of where each tax dollar is going. So for each tax dollar collected, the city retains about 38%, while schools gets about 45%. The county gets 15%, and then the DIA, Zoo, and the Huron-Clinton Metropolitan Authority gets about 1.5%. We'll now take a quick look at the results of the water and sewer funds. First up here is the water fund. The blue-green bar is showing the revenues compared to the cash outflows in the orange, which are the total expenses less depreciation and adding back debt payments from the statement of cash flows. You can see that the water fund increased its unrestricted net position during the year by about $660,000. The next slide here is the sewer fund. Again, the blue-green bar is showing the revenues compared to the orange bar of the cash outflows. You can see that the sewer fund also increased its unrestricted net position during the year by about $1.3 million. Taking a really quick look at some capital investment slides here. This first one is the general government. The city continues to invest resources in capital, and for the current year, there was about $5.6 million invested to general government capital improvements. Similarly here, this is for the enterprise funds, the city, which are the water and sewer funds. The city invested about $3.2 million in those capital improvements to those funds for this current year. Finally, a quick look at the funded percentages for both pension and OPEB, which is retiree health care, compared to others in the county and state from a previous year data, 2023. Pension is just above average for the state, while slightly below for the county, while OPEB, or retiree health care, is well above for both state and county. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Martin to go through the letter.
Martin, I have one quick question before we move on. The increase in the sewer fund, and I think Marilyn probably has the answer to this, that was as a result of the ARPA funding coming in, is that correct?
Yeah, we were able to utilize a large sum of that for a project that was already in the capital plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And just to kind of note on that too, just overall, I know that some of the increases were noted in there. I would say, and before we talk about the letter, is that I think the city's done a very nice job of managing the funds overall. You can see the OPEB plans funded over 100%. That's through the bonds that were issued years ago. So you've definitely benefited as a result of that. The market has been exceeding what the bond interest rate is. So hindsight was a very, very good move, just basically where you're at right now. And you're definitely funded higher than a lot of communities in the state itself, just in general. So I think that's good. From the capital perspective, the city's been doing a nice job of investing in the infrastructure and other assets. And it's just one of those items that I would always recommend is making sure you have a forward-looking plan, not just a year or so. And I feel the city's been doing a very nice job on that. But always look, 5 years, maybe even more ahead. A lot of times, especially water and sewer and other aspects, things can break. There could be emergency funds that are needed all of a sudden. So having that, good spending, like just overall what you've been doing, I think is very important to make sure that there's no issues in the future. So with that, I'm just going to flip to the letter, the post-audit letter. So before the audit started, we issued a letter that was, pre-audit letter. We're very innovative with our words here. So pre-audit letter just kind of talked about what we were going to focus on and any concerns or anything that you may have. From the post-audit letter, just kind of bookend to that, talk about the process, and basically I would say it's more of like on the boring side of a letter, so it's more boilerplate. And basically what that means is we didn't really find any, there was no disagreements. I feel that the city's done a very nice job of maintaining the books and records. But there were no adjustments as a result of our audit. We did look at controls, et cetera, and just given the size of the staff that you have, overall, we haven't seen any issues or anything like that. So just want to point that out. From the perspective of the second portion of the letter, which starts on page 4, those items are just more like legislative and just informational items in general. A couple things I did want to point out. There were a few new standards that were implemented a couple of years ago for leases, subscription-based information technology, and a couple other ones. So once the city implemented it, everything's correct, and we made sure that the city did those things correctly. It's just an item to point out that the city needs to keep an eye out for any new contracts that you enter, et cetera, because those could have an impact and still have to be recorded in the financial statements. So it's not just kind of like one and done. It's something to maintain, to keep an eye out for. Another thing that I did want to point out, and it's on the last couple of pages, so it's basically new legislation and new pronouncements that are coming out. There's one that's going to be actually effective for next year. It's compensated absences, how they're accounted for. So the statements themselves are going to look very similar. It's just the liability is going to change a little bit, especially on the government-wide statements. We do have, Plan Moran does have templates, tools, et cetera, to make sure that the city is able to implement correctly. I know it gets a little bit technical, the standard itself, so we do have those resources, and we're going to make sure that we have those conversations with the city to make sure that there's no issues or anything like that. And there's a couple other pronouncements that we just mentioned, including a couple that just kind of in the distant horizon, sort of distant horizon, like standard for new financial reporting. So basically, like the statements are going to change the way they look a little bit. I haven't seen the drafts yet. They're supposed to come out, I believe, in 2025. My understanding is it's probably not going to be effective for a couple of years after that. One thing I always say is GASB never makes things shorter and simpler. Usually that means is the statements are going to probably become a little bit more, lengthy and probably a little bit more complex. But we'll see once the time passes, and we'll see what that's going to look like. And of course, we're going to share that with the city as well. So that concludes the presentation. I did want to say thank you so much to the city just for all the help throughout, especially Maryland. I know it's a heavy lift every single year. It's already an 8 to 5 job, and probably more like 8 to 8 versus whatever that may be. And then auditors come in, ask a bunch of questions, request a lot of documents, support over a number of weeks. So I realize it's a big lift. We do definitely appreciate the just cooperation throughout. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Thank you for the presentation. I don't know if this would be a question for you or for Marilyn, but 2 questions. I know you mentioned that we're doing really well with our OPEB, being over 100% funded. Do you feel the same way about the pension?
Yeah, so the pension, I still at 85%, everyone ideally would like to be at 100%. And I would say it's, when you talk to, depending who you talk to, like if you ask me, I'd always want to be at 100% everything, I guess. But there's a school of thought, and I do agree with that too, is that if you put your money in the pension system, then you cannot use it for any other purpose. So being 100% funded is usually not the most recommended approach either. So at 85% is actually a pretty healthy percentage. The state mandates that you're at least 60%. If not, you have to do like a corrective action plan essentially. But so you're way above that. In some case, there's a market downturn or anything like that on your investment side. Likely you would not dip down below that 60%. From talking with a lot of my clients, their goals are usually try and get to 70 to 75%. So clearly you're above that as well. So I would say you're definitely in a spot that you should be definitely proud of. Just keep making the actuarial recommended contributions, and you'll get to where you need to be over time.
So the bonding that staff recommended and the council at the time approved definitely helped the funding level of the pension.
It definitely, hindsight definitely looks like that. And like I said, the interest rates are lower on the debt. Nowadays, the interest rates are clearly higher, but luckily you were frozen in at those interest rates. And the investment returns are healthier than the payments that you're making on the interest. So hindsight, it was definitely a good decision. I don't know what's going to happen with the investments, in the future. Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, but so far it's definitely paid off.
And then my last question was, do you have a recommendation on the fund balance, the range of the fund balance? Somewhere I read that 17%, I don't know if that's our fund balance or that's the recommendation, and no more than 35. Is that the range that you recommend?
Yeah, I would say there's not necessarily a top end to stop at. It's more, you don't want to go below a certain percentage. Most communities, I would say you want to have probably 2 to 3 months worth of expenses in your fund balance, which translates to probably a little bit more than 20%. So I would say try and aim for that. I think that there's a lot of folks out there that think the school of thought is maybe like 15% is fine. But I also look at it from the perspective of what happened, just like look at, and I realize it's years ago, but 2009, 2010, when the economy went down, that 10, 15% was eaten up by a lot of communities real quick, and all of a sudden there were issues. So I do feel that There's not necessarily a maximum amount, but I would definitely try and err on the side of like at least being over 20% or so. And then also depends largely what you're foreseeing on your expenses, especially when it comes to capital outlay. If you are expecting some significant projects in the future, that percentage clearly ticks up quite a bit.
And then banking. What is the city's current percentage, Marilyn? Was it the 17% that I thought I saw?
The 17% is equivalent to approximately 2 months of expenses.
Okay.
That's our bottom
Okay.
of what we would recommend, but we're currently at, what are we at, 50, I think it's like 50%, 48%?
Oh, so we're, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely above that threshold.
Yeah.
okay, great.
I'll double check real quick.
When I saw that 17%, I thought, uh-oh, but.
Yeah,
that
that's
makes sense.
the lowest we would ever want to go.
Yeah, I think you're around 40, between 40 and 45%.
Great. Okay.
40, a little over 41 is our unassigned balance.
So, great job. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Berman.
Thank you. Just, the only question I have is, I seem to remember that our pension funding every year is going down. But like when we bonded out, 4 or 5 years ago, we were at 100%. And now every year when we get this chart, it's slowly going down. So now we're at 85. I think last year we were at like 88 or something. So I don't know if this is a question for you or a question we need to discuss in budgeting, but when do we need to take corrective action to stop from going down?
Looking at schedule here.
And the same thing, the funding for the retirement health care keeps going up. I think last year that was like, what, 130%, and now we're at 150%. So are these, could we take money from one and move to the other, or are we better just leaving everything the way it is?
So legally, I don't believe you can move money from OPEB to pension. More of a legal question, but my understanding is you can't move it back between the two. A lot of times what happens, and I don't have the numbers specifically of what the liability was before versus now. A lot of times what happens is, like, even though your investments can be performing pretty well, the liability changes as well. So the actuary will provide you with an estimate based on current expenses and what the projections are supposed to, what's supposed to occur in the future with expenses, with the number of employees or retirees that are getting paid, et cetera. So there's a lot of different things that come in. There's discount rates that are utilized. And in the recent past, there were a lot of the rates were adjusted, the discount rates, to calculate the liability itself. But also I know that sometimes some of the given information that's put into the calculation changes as well. So it's never an exact, so even if your assets or your investments are doing very well, sometimes that gap still grows a little bit from the perspective of what the funded percentage is.
Might just be something, Marilyn, for us to have a look at budget time.
Yeah, and we had talked about in our post-audit meeting, because we're still making a normal cost contribution to the OPEB side, that would be something maybe to discuss, to not make that normal contribution to the OPEB plan and allocate that towards the pension side.
Yeah, so
there was already a little bit of discussion on,
yeah, and I forget how much it was,
addressing that.
$100,000, I think.
yeah, it's over 100 that's
Yeah.
normal cost.
But it's, so you can't, like, once the assets are put in, the investments are made in OPEB, you can't move it to the pension, but you can stop making contributions to the OPEB plan and instead of making a higher
And other
contribution to
money
pension.
to pension side.
Exactly.
Okay. So a budget conversation.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, keeping in mind what Mark said just a few minutes ago about the fact that 85% isn't a bad spot to be, comparatively 100% might sound like it's better, and you could argue it, but there is the argument to be made that you don't need to be at 100% necessarily.
Well, I understand that. I just know that 4 or 5 years ago, we were at 100%. So.
Yeah, and they fluctuate quickly because as of our actuarial, at December 31st, we were at 91%. Then with the GASB roll forward, just 6 months later, we're at 85. So we had talked about that too. What does December 31st of this year look like with the
Because it
rates of return? It fluctuates so quickly.
Thank you.
That's why I picked to be an accountant versus an actuary.
All right, any further questions from council? All right, well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
Another
so
great
much.
year. Thank you, Marilyn and finance team. Another great holiday.
Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays.
All right, with that, we'll move on to our second presentation, the presentation on spurt operations at the DPW. And again, we will have members of the public that have questions for Mr. Whitley come up during the first call to the public for those questions. So it's just a little bit further down the agenda.
Thank you, Member Resnick. Mayor and Council, we would like to introduce Bill and Adriana from Spurt Company. We have been working with them for a number of years, as you know, and recently we did receive more than normal amount of odor complaints over the last 2 or 3 months, and we felt that it was necessary to bring them in and just explain some of the process and what we're doing to address those odor complaints. And with that, I want to introduce Bill, and he'll have a presentation.
Yeah, good evening. Bill Whitley from Spurt Industries. My wife Adriana is here. She and I run the business together, and like Tim said, with the odor complaints and issues that have come in recently, happy to have the opportunity to come and speak to what is happening, what the cause of that is, and what we're doing to address that here moving forward. So for us, the story of 2024 and the cause of the odor that we've had really for us drives to this change from GFL to Priority in the waste hauling business. I'm sure everybody's been aware of that and some of the trash hauling challenges and things that have happened in that market. For us, 85% of the volume that came into us in October came from Priority. So they're a very big part of our business and a very big part of the material that came in. And as this transition has happened from GFL into Priority, we have seen changes in the volume of material this year, unlike anything we've seen since I purchased Spurt in 2016. We have good seasonality data that we know what happens, and that 2 weeks ago was the peak leaf season, and now that we're past that, it starts to fall off. So we have expectations of how much volume that we're going to receive. And this year we haven't received what we expected to receive. As that transition initially happened June, July, and August, as it moved out of GFL into Priority, we saw significantly less volume than we expected. We were down over 20% in that time period. Our odor issues started, complaints started in late August, and that coincides perfectly with the time that we started to see a dramatically increased volume of material from Priority. Starting in September, those next 3 months, our volume was up almost 100% from last year. We did not expect that to happen. We did not ask to receive 100% more material, and we are no longer receiving 100% more material. We have turned away material, we've turned down material. We're still getting more than we used to, but we're getting an amount of material that we can handle. So because that material came in faster than we were expecting, we didn't do a good enough job making our piles correctly, keeping our piles the right size, and getting the right recipe in our piles. Like I said, we have an expectation for what we're going to receive, and when twice as much shows up as what we were expecting, we weren't ready for that. That happened starting around the beginning of September. By the 1st of October, I hired additional staff, and by the 1st of November, we had brought in additional turning equipment. We have 2 excavators on site, not 1, so that we can better manage the piles, get them to the right size, and get the brush and bulk mixed in so that our piles will breathe properly and not create those odors. A key part of that, I have some information up there on our outgoing volumes. Key part of that, our outgoing volumes continue to rise year on year. That gives us the space to spread this material out and manage it in a more responsible way moving forward. We've heard the concern from the community that the issue is food. We do not believe that that is the case, and there's no data that supports that that is the case. There have been no significant changes in the intake of food to Spurt that coincide with the odors, right? The creation of the odors came from this increase in yard waste volume. There's an MLive article that's being emailed around, and it talks about material from Ann Arbor and material from University of Michigan. Ann Arbor's been with us since July of 2023, U of M since December of 2023. We managed that material successfully without overcreation. And so I just wanted to kind of speak to that. We also have the Wixom commingled food waste, yard waste program. From our perspective, that program has been a success. We haven't seen huge participation in that program, but we have not seen the problems that were feared. There was fear about contamination, and there was fear about problems at the curb and rodents and animals getting into bags at the curb. We haven't seen any of those things come to fruition, and so from our perspective, that program has been a success, and we would like to see it continue. We do have a bit more food coming in this year than last, but like I said, well within industry best practice ratios. In our windrow composting method, best practice would say you can go up to 20 to 25% food in your recipe and still be at appropriate levels. We fall well below that. April, May, June, July, without odor issues, we were running food was about 11% of the yard waste volume that came in. August, September, October, when we have had some, food was only 6% of that recipe. And so the data shows it's not the food, it was the yard waste, and as I said, we are making efforts to address that. So we have been, and will continue to invest in staff and equipment to improve our operations and to address kind of these situations. So in 2024, prior to any of these odor issues, a few kind of key things that we did. One was to hire a soil scientist. Nathan, he's sitting in the back of the room. He's a Wixom resident that moved here to work at Spurt. And so he's here to help us with our product testing, with our certification, to bring the scientific mind and process to what we do at the site. We've invested in equipment. We brought a new slow speed shredder. It's $1 million piece of equipment that we bought to prepare for this transition to aerated static pile composting, which I've spoken about here before, and I'll touch on a little bit later this evening. And we've invested in trucks for delivery so that we can get material out, so that we have the space to properly manage material on site. Like I said, it was late August, early September, these complaints really started rolling in. By the 1st of October, we hired an additional staff person. By the 1st of November, I brought in a second excavator so we could manage through this peak leaf season, which is coming to an end for us. The incoming volume of material is coming to an end. Many municipalities end their collection this week. I think Wixom is the following. By the second week in December, we'll have virtually no yard waste coming in until spring. Every pile that we touch right now, we are checking the recipe, we are adding the shredded brush, we're adding the bulk to fix the recipe in the pile so that we can address this issue. And we will continue to invest in people and equipment into the future so that we can properly manage the material. When I say when we come back in the spring, our full-time staff of 9 will all work throughout the winter. Our season kicks back off in April when the soil season starts and the yard waste starts flowing again. We will add an additional 2 staff in April, and we will have additional equipment capacity for turning, screening, and wheel loader capacity at that time to manage the increased volume at the site. I wanted to update you on aerated static pile and the status of that. I've talked to you about it before. A quick refresh. Aerated static pile is a more advanced composting method than the windrow method that we use today. You put down a concrete pad and pipes underground through the concrete so you can blow and suck air through your active composting pad. It allows the piles to be given oxygen 24/7. This reduces the processing time, it reduces odor generation, and it reduces the fire risk. We received an EAGLE grant. We completed that work in 2023 to do planning and design work. And we're currently working on an EPA Swiffer grant with Tim here to convert the entire site and all of our processing over to aerated static pile composting. The grant that we are proposing is directly in line with what this EPA Swiffer program is after. They want to see more composting, they want to see food processing, and this is specifically for municipalities. And so we've been given indication that we're a great candidate to receive this grant. It will be about a $2.5 million grant request. That application will go in next month. And critically and much appreciated, there is no grant, there is no match required on that grant. It's 100% federal funding. This is a drawing of a layout that was prepared from our planning and design study funded through this Eagle grant. In the center of the screen here, you can see there's 4 modules. This would be the concrete pad. That's where the aeration would be. That's where our active composting would happen. The 4 bays that were there were designed to accommodate all of the material that we were receiving at the time, and then some growth, some additional material. Well, that additional material has shown up. And so our plans now would call for 5 bays instead of 4. Tim and I have been discussing maintaining our grant ask for 4 and spurt funding the 5th bay that would go into construction in the spring. It would be operational by the middle of next year. And 1 module, just kind of for reference, would be of sufficient capacity to process all of the food that Spurt receives at this time. And so Tim and I are talking about that and how that fits with the contract extension that we did previously. For an example of the efficacy of this aerated static pile composting, this is Google Maps pictures of our site and just kind of quickly calling out the distances from Spurt to our nearest neighbors. Off to the northeast, it's a little over 1,100 feet to our nearest neighbor. To the southeast, we're over 2,100 feet to our nearest neighbor. This is a satellite picture of another composter in Michigan who has installed the exact same system that we proposed to install at Spurt. The distance from his active composting pad to his nearest neighbors is less than 300 feet. He is a yard waste and food waste composter. He started at a windrow method, and he had odor problems and odor complaints. He put in this aerated pad, and he now does not have those problems and does not have those complaints. And like I said, he's less than 300 feet away, and our nearest neighbor is at 1,100. And so we're very confident in the proposal that we're making and taking that as our future path. Kind of wanted to close with just some community updates on the things that we're doing in addition to receiving yard waste and making compost. We have 2 full-time staff members that are Wixom residents. We have 40 Wixom businesses who are customers of ours. We've had 640 resident visits to the compost site this year to drop off either yard waste, food waste, or to collect compost or mulch. We also donate and give back. So we were the sponsor of the Sarah Banks Turkey Trot last week. We're the sponsor for the Wixom Elementary Therapy Dog. The picture there is from the donation of mulch to Wixom Elementary. My kids there, my youngest son goes to Wixom Elementary. My oldest son goes to Sarah Banks Middle School. And so we're members of the community and we care. And so I want you all to know that we care. I want everyone here to know that we care. Every time that there is an odor complaint, either Adriana or I personally go out, investigate the complaint, drive the neighborhoods, drive the city, come back to the yard and look at exactly what we're doing, what every operator is doing, what pile we're in, and what we need to do to address that issue. It is important to us, and we will fix it and get it right. So our phone number, website, Facebook, and Instagram are all here. Please reach out to us. We would love to have everyone out to the site to see what we do. Council, staff, residents, we'd love to have everybody through. We hosted 210 7th graders from Sarah Banks for Earth Day in April. We love to have people out to show people what we do from beginning to end. We have no secrets. We're an open book. And with that, I'll turn it over for questions.
All right, Madam Clerk, could we move the first call to the public up? There's really nothing in the Robert's Rules of Orders, and that way we can get
No, you
this
could do
while
that
it's fresh in everybody's minds.
for an agenda change, yeah.
Okay. Council, comments?
Thank you. So thank you for the presentation. I think it's great what you do. I participate in all of the programs. When we see the complaints, we of course have to take them seriously. You had mentioned something about in August or September, the volume increased quite a bit. Can you tell us why that is?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was down. Priority's having some trouble getting stuff picked up. Some of it got picked up and was deposited at other sites that weren't compost yards. They kind of got their feet under it and then started getting material to compost yards. So some of it got dropped off at transfer stations and then transferred in from there to us. They have also moved material around, right? So an example is Farmington Hills. The city of Farmington Hills as a Rossack community, that material used to always come to Spurt when it was a waste management hauled account. When GFL won the hauling for that municipality, GFL owned a compost site. GFL took the material away from Spurt and took it to the compost site that they owned. When Priority initially took over, on day one, they kept doing the same thing, taking stuff to the same places, and then they realized that for them it didn't make sense to take it to the GFL site the way that it made sense for GFL. They transferred that material back to Spurt. And so that's an example of something that happened that increased the volume at the Spurt yard.
So we had it, it went away for a while.
Correct.
It came back.
Yeah, despite this spike that's come on this late in the season, this will not be a Spurt record for incoming volume. Incoming yard waste volume was much higher in 15, 16, and 17. Those were the peak years. 18, 19, 20 were down a little bit. By last year, we were down a lot. We were down to like 50,000 yards. The peak was over 100. The answer for us isn't 50, right? Like we would like to see more than the 50 that we'd fallen to from 100. And we can successfully process more without problems and without order. We didn't know that much was going to come in September and October. Now that we know what the material flow is, we will staff for it, we will provide the correct equipment, we will make the right blend. We just got surprised by the rapid change in the volume of material.
Well, I'm glad that the food compost program didn't cause any of the issue that when I first saw this, I thought, uh-oh. Because I participate as well as I know many council members up here do participate in that program. So hopefully that'll keep ramping up and residents will get more involved and get over there. So
We hope so.
I'm glad it's going well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. We do, on that, the yard waste season is coming to an end, so the commingled program will end. We do have bins available at Spurt for residents to drop off their food waste. That's available 360, well, not 365 days. It's available 12 months a year. We're open Monday through Friday. But residents can drop off their food waste at the yard at no charge, just like they can drop off their yard waste at the yard.
Great, thank you for mentioning that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Whitley, I know you've been in here several times to talk to odor problems, and it feels like there's a problem, you come in, you talk how you're going to address it, and it goes away for 9 months or something and then comes back. This time I'm reading some of the complaints, and there's the terms used, rotten garbage and landfill, which is different than my experience with the odors that I've smelled before from Spurt, which is more like going past the Anheuser-Busch Brewery where they're composting malt and barley to make alcohol. It's the same kind of sweet organic smell. In your view, and I know this is subjective, when you go out to the complaint sites, is there any change in the quality of the odor? It's hard to describe what the difference is between a landfill and traditional composting, but you know it when you know it. Are we seeing anything different because of the food? I think people are thinking that we're rotting a big pile of food in the back of your, in the DPW yard, and it doesn't sound like that's the case because that really hasn't changed for several years now. We've been bringing food in for a while. We just haven't had it commingled. Is that correct? And then what's the nature of the odors that you're seeing?
So food has been coming into Spurt since 2017. Those volumes have been increasing in a more serious way since 2020. And like I said, Ann Arbor was July of 2023. The U of M program in December was a larger program than the Ann Arbor program, and that was December of 2023, right? Like all of that predates the odors that we've seen in the last couple of months. It's hard to describe a smell in words. I don't know that I would characterize that there's been a different bad smell. When we get bad smells, it's usually because we didn't make a pile correctly, and that the mix is wrong or the size is wrong. And so that anaerobic smell of a pile that's not getting oxygen. And that's why the aerated static pile solves the issues, because you blow air through and you provide oxygen, and so you prevent that odor that's created when you get an anaerobic without oxygen portion in a pile.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Barron?
Thank you. We have a chance to possibly question them after listening to the residents as well? Okay.
Yeah, happy to. I'll be here.
But
all-
I guess a couple things that just don't line up from your presentation for me, okay? The complaint started the beginning of, I think the first complaint was August 8th. And that complaint stated that it had been going on for several weeks before they finally filed a complaint, okay? And your presentation had that volume was down at that time. And volume didn't pick up until really the leaf time. So why was it smelling all summer? And why did you even need a complaint from a resident to take action? Why can't you guys smell it when you're there every day and take the corrective action that's needed?
So it's just a couple things. We did see increased volume prior to leaf season, right? It was early in September when we saw, certainly by early September, we saw increased volume, and it was not leaf volume, it was grass. For us, grass and leaves are different chemically. Grass is heavier nitrogen, leaves are heavier carbon, they don't compost the same, the mix needs to be a little bit different. We definitely saw it before leaf season started. We monitor piles on a daily basis, right? Like we're out there checking, and Nathan's checking pile temperatures on every pile in our site every week. So we are out there monitoring it, but we respond when we get complaints, right? Like that's definitely something that causes us to react. That's not the only time that we make a change, but we definitely make changes. That early August complaint was actually that was a different pile on the site. That was a city vac truck leaf pile that had kind of gone anaerobic and condensed down on itself. That was a different pile that at that time we viewed that pile as an isolated incident, and we learned in the following weeks that it wasn't. And so I don't want to say that we only respond when there's a complaint, but we definitely take the complaint seriously and respond to them.
It just seems odd that the complaint started before the volume started. I mean, I understand from your presentation that you believe a lot of it came to volume, but looking at the log, I mean, there were several that came in at the beginning of August, and then it looks
And
like
then again at like
they
the end of
picked back up when
28th, I believe.
it wasn't resolved. I guess that's probably the concern why there's residents here today, is because they did complain, and it's been over 90 days and you haven't fixed it, and they shouldn't have to deal with this for over 90 days. That's unacceptable.
I understand. Like I said, when that first batch came in August, I think it was the 8th or the 11th of August, we viewed that as an isolated incident. Before that time, I think it had been 18 months since we had had an odor complaint. And so when we had that one, we did not ignore it, but we did not look at that as a systematic problem at the site when it had been the first one that we'd had in, I believe, 18 months. And so when they continued after that, that's when it was really like, hey, we need to look at what's going on here, we need to dive into what's going on, and we need to examine process changes to prevent it. And so that's why we hired additional staff, we brought in additional equipment, and we've adjusted the volume so that spike that we had in September and October, we don't have the same increased delta now in November that we had in September and October.
Well, I mean, I don't tend to know how to operate your business. I want to tell you whether or not it's volume or food. I'll leave that to you. I'll say it from my perspective. I appreciate you coming here today. I appreciate my kids go to Wicks Elementary in Sarah Banks. I appreciate the contributions you give to the community. I think we're going to hear from several residents that maybe aren't as forgiving. But that being said, if you can fix it, great. We're happy for the partnership we have with you. If you can't fix it, I'll have no problem, voting to reject the contract with you come springtime if this starts back up again.
Understood?
I've got a couple as well, Mr. Whitley. The Ann Arbor, I should say the U of M program started in December 23.
U of M was December of 2023.
And if I recall, U of M's resident population from students is about 52,000 this year.
I'm not sure I could quote you on that one.
What, so that's quite an increase. I mean, when we started the program in 2008, Wixom had a population of about 14,000 residents, right? We're at 17,000 now. Ann Arbor itself is at 111,000. U of M gets a 52,000 student population there starting in August. Is the food waste increasing with those populations being on site?
I mean, we certainly we're taking in more food than we used to, right? But when we talk about like 52,000 students versus 17,000 residents of Wixom, the primary material we get from Wixom residents is yard waste.
Yeah.
What we get in U of M is we don't get yard waste, we just get food waste, and we're getting it from the dorms,
The dorms.
right? So we don't get like all of the waste from 52,000 people. We're getting the wasted food from the dorm cafeterias, and I couldn't tell you what the population that lives in the dorms is. I don't have all the figures here. I could certainly tell you the cubic yardage that we took in from U of M. I don't have those numbers here, but we know that.
There's not a huge increase in food waste intake, is what you're saying.
No, there's not a huge increase, and like I said, we are in this period that the complaints have been coming in. The food percentage of our piles is lower than it was through the spring and summer when we were not receiving complaints. We do
Even though
not
our
believe.
leaves and twigs are lower as well, percentage is still lower. Okay, next question, U of M home games. What happens there?
It does not come to us.
Okay.
They have asked.
I was hoping that was your answer.
They have asked, and we won't touch that material. It's far too contaminated. We're ticket holders. Like, we go to Michigan football games, and there's no way that stream is clean enough for us to take it. We're one of only 4 compost sites in the state that produce a certified finished compost product, an SDA certified compost. There are 30 farms around Metro Detroit that are growing food in our compost, a number of them certified organic farms that rigorously test both our compost but also our composting process, that we're producing a high quality product. And there's nothing that comes in that's worth it if I can't still produce compost that's good enough to sell to those farms for people to go food in. So we won't touch the material that comes in from that. We have a relationship with virtually all of the generators of the food that comes into Spurt. We have toured their kitchens. We have talked to them about the accepted materials, what products are acceptable, what products are not acceptable. We need to produce high quality stuff, and we're out there checking loads to make sure that we're not getting in material that we don't want.
Okay, so my final question is, are there any new types of leachates that get into the water table from this, the food waste itself?
No.
Or compostables from food sources?
Yeah, so from our site, there should be no leachate going to groundwater, and there should be nothing going to surface water. There's a compacted clay liner throughout the entire field so that nothing goes down to ground, and the site is bermed. The only way in and out of the site is the driveway. So we don't have any water going to surface water either. And so, like I said, we rigorously test the finished product, and any of the compostable products that we accept as food products, the compostable liners, their plates, cups, forks, those we only accept certified compostable products by the Biodegradable Products Institute. They're certified to break down. They're certified to not contain PFAS or any other harmful substances. And we serve on the national committee with BPI that designs those certifications, so that we can be educated and make sure that we're not taking in anything that would be harmful to environment, our customers, the food our customers grow in our compost.
Very good. I'm going to read the rules for the call of the public.
Deputy Mayor, can I jump in real quick to follow up on something that Mr. Whitley just said? One thing I'd like to get across is the level of expertise that Mr. Whitley has. And I could ask Tim to answer this question if you're not comfortable doing it, Bill. But I know that you're involved in various industry oversight boards. I'd like you to tell us what those are. You just mentioned one of them. I'd like you to tell us what those are.
Sure. So I serve on the board of directors of the Michigan Recycling Coalition. I'm the president of the Compost Council of Michigan. I'm the treasurer of the Michigan Organics Council. I serve on the Governor's Solid Waste and Sustainability Advisors Panel. Tim mentioned that's the group that has been designing the Part 115 solid waste law rewrite. That's also the group that establishes what general permits will look like for compost sites, MRF, transfer sites, and landfills going forward into the future. I serve on the Oakland County Materials Management Planning Committee as the organics and composting representative. That's a program that is going to help us and the entire industry. One of the objectives of that planning process, the old solid waste planning process that had existed for decades says counties must show that they have 66 months of landfill capacity, and that's it. As long as you had a hole in the ground to dump your trash, you were good. The new planning process calls for counties to plan not just for trash, but for all of their recyclables, their single stream, their yard waste, their food waste, to identify where the processing facilities are for each of those, what are their capacities, and where that material should flow. So what happened this year of, well, it used to go to this place, now it goes to the other place, and now it's going to a third place. That planning process is going to solve that, because we're going to call out and say, hey, well, Wixom's going to take some Rossock stuff, and Sacra's going to take the Sacra stuff, and there's a need in another part of Metro Detroit to have another compost site. And so this planning process that's going on will help with that. So I serve on the Oakland County Planning Board there. I've been a member of the BPI Composters Committee. I've been through compost operator training certification class by the U.S. Composting Council, and I will be, I was asked to lead a national committee to certify compostable products around what is and isn't acceptable. There are currently 4 national standards. We're trying to unify that, so I was asked to lead a national committee for that, and I will be speaking in Phoenix in January at the U.S. Composting Council National Conference on an operators panel.
Yeah, so my point was, Mr. Whitley's one of the foremost experts in the field, and he's running the site that's in the city of Wixom, and I wanted to make sure that we got that across. And you mentioned being one of, was it 3 producers that have certified?
There are four certified producers in the state who produce a certified compost. We're the only producer in Oakland, Wayne, or Macomb County who's achieved that certification.
So it's just a little bit to reassure council, to reassure the residents and anybody else that's wondering about the operations here, that we do have somebody that's certified, what I would call certifiable expert in the field. And I think that we're going to have this problem taken care of when we get through the process of making the improvements that have been put in place by Mr. Whitley and his staff. So I just wanted to make sure to get that out, because I thought that was important. I know that he's well respected in the field and is going to do a good job of managing that and getting that back in order, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Not talked about ahead of time. So like I said, I was going to ask Tim to answer it if you didn't want to, but I appreciate that you did. Thank you. Yeah, you probably would. It was a long list, right?
Yeah.
So,
We try to get back. We do try to do it the right way, and we try to get back. And we bumped our heads, but we will fix it, and we do care.
Could you speak a little bit to the increase or the decrease that's desired in the state landfills for food waste?
Yeah, so one of there's a state program right now that there's a state objective to try to reduce food waste by 50% in the state by the year 2030. 2030 is a pretty aggressive timeline. I don't expect that we're going to hit it, but the intention was to get people motivated. That effort targets all parts of the food process, and so it starts in farm fields, and they're looking at what rots on the grocery store. Don't buy too much food so that it rots at home. If you do have food, get it into a food pantry before it gets wasted. And then at the bottom of the chain, we as composters kind of come last, right? Like, there's a hierarchy of what to do with food waste. The first is don't waste it. The second is feed people. The third is feed animals. And if you can't do any of those things, before you put it in a landfill, they would like to see it composted. So the state has this goal to reduce it by 50% by 2030. Just received a $700,000 grant from the EPA to hire staff at Eagle to work on training and education and diversion programs for food waste.
Well, thank you, Mr. Whitley. We're going to open up the first call to the public here, and then there'll try to be some questions. So I will read the rules for the call to the public. Public shall address the council during the call to the public, which will be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. we're going to move this first call in public up. It shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council. All comments made by the public should be made directly to the council. Open it up. Sir.
Hi, how you doing?
Name and address.
I'm Ken Burke. I live in the Hillsborough subdivision. I've been a Wixom resident since 1999. Moved into this beautiful community, grew up the road in Lake Sherwood. I have never been to this. I've never seen a council meeting until this year. I've never been here. You guys have done a great job. I think Mr. Dornan, right? Done a great job. I've been here through history, paid my taxes increased, city. I brag to my business partners about the city because their snow's always crappy. We have one of the best snow services ever. Nor here nor there, and no, we're not supposed to talk about that, but I'm here for one reason. I live here, I enjoyed it, I put additions on my home, finally got everything all paid for, I have a great business in Novi, and I am ready to move. Because, and it makes sense now once I heard Spurt's timeline, and the timeline is perfect because what you don't know you're smelling in your community, you don't really know. So I didn't put a label to it. I started smelling this stuff in the end of 2023. And I also started hearing more equipment at nighttime. I'm a kind of a night owl. I built a beautiful little shed on my house. Cost me a lot of money. I'm ready to get rid of all of it because it smells like death in my yard. I worked at hospitals here on Valley Sinai. I smell death, and this is yard waste, rot, dead animal smell that is more all summer long. I was thinking I was crazy because I smelled wood chips. When people put new wood chips in the community, it smells like horse crap. It is horrible in my neighborhood, and I need to get out of there now if you guys aren't going to change this. And I understand all those credentials, all this stuff and degrees. I kind of can say the same thing. My business in VOCs, I work with Eagle, the state of Michigan. You know what? In all the communities that smell paint fumes coming out of my customers, they get shut down. The communities win. And this is horrible. I've never been here. You guys have never seen me. I'm a taxpayer. And it is horrible. Whatever they're doing, it makes sense. The timeline of when they're bringing the heavy waste from University of Michigan, me sitting in my backyard, I can't even mow my grass. I gag. It's horrible. And I've never seen these two people at my house. I went and talked to Tim here at his facility, and I asked him, do you smell that? And he looked at me and goes, no, I don't smell nothing. And I was getting ready to throw up. And it's kind of maybe, and I have to give him, be mindful of other people. But in my paint business, when I'm in a painting industry all day long, and I'm at Patrick Industries, they paint motorhomes all day, I'm working with these guys to evacuate some VOCs through my paint booths that I sell. And I become numb to the smell. I don't know, I get home, my wife goes, you stink. And I'm like, what do you mean I stink? It's the paint fumes coming off my clothes for being there a day. And maybe that's it, or he's just lying to me. This is horrible. The smell is horrible. All my neighbors, we walk out every day. It's horrible. These guys never came and measured my air. I got air sensors. I don't know if I can. I will invest to prove it wrong. And I used to have deer coming through my backyard, turkey, everything. The deer are coming out smelling like poop. They walk by. They must be in the water back there. It's nasty. You guys come to my house and enjoy my summer when they take more from University of Michigan. Buy my house. Because I don't want to leave this community, but it has changed and it all makes sense now. And it's very bad. And I don't want to sit up here and complain, and I hear the manager saying this guy has tons of credentials. But you know what really scared me? I didn't know, call me kind of not undereducated. I thought the city handled all the waste. I didn't know it was a business. It scared me when it became a business. More food, more money. It scares me. And I don't want you guys to get sold. It's bad. Come to my house, I'll have a party in the summer. You won't like it. You won't want to eat. We're shutting our windows, we're eating inside. And then how would you, and more people in the community, I don't know, let other people talk. But it's bad. And I've been here since 1999. I love the city.
Sir, can you state your address for the record?
Can
So,
I
Madam
have
Clerk-
everyone else's address?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
For the record, though?
Yeah, 2512 Headingham Boulevard, Kenneth Burke. I've been there since 1999. House was built in 1996. I do work in your community. My customers are a Pontiac Trail that have, no one's complaining about paint smell. It's bad. It's bad. I would not donate another dime. Can we get this back? Can I pay more in taxes to stop this? I don't know. I'm willing to do that. It's bad. That's all I can
Sir.
say. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, anyone else? Call the public?
Someone else say something.
State your name and address, please.
Carl Holford, 1935 Charms Road. I'm 4 houses down from Spurts. I don't smell anything, and I've been here since 1974, since I was born here in this city. I smell the sewer plant more than I smell Spurts. Don't hear nothing from them guys. They're only operations 7 to 5, so that's normal business hours. Don't hear their machines. I hear cities machines at 2 o'clock in the morning loading salt trucks out more than I hear them. There is no smell when it's done right. Yes, everybody's had a boo-boo. He may have mixed something wrong once in a while, and you may have a smell here or there, but I have no smell, and I'm 4 houses to the east of them. I back up to the 300-acre nature preserve that the DPW was on. So I have no issue with them guys being here. You have a small guy that's giving back to the community, does everything he can to help try to make the community right, trying to reuse our yard waste that we all produce here, and guys are here attacking them over a smell. It's not that bad. There is no smell 9 times out of 10. You may get it once in a blue moon when they mix a pile up. It's gone in 24 hours. Like I said, I'm 1,000 yards from them. I'm one of them houses that's 1,100 feet from them guys. It's not that bad. There's no issue. That's it.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else for the call to the public? Hello?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. Kathy Gronsky, 2448 Headingham, Wixom, Michigan, resident for over 30 years. First, let me say I'm a big composter, and we're big recyclers, so I'm all in on that. We always try to reduce and reuse and eliminate landfill waste. I understand the general concern. And I have complained multiple times this summer about the smell, which was really never noticeable before this summer to me. I have filed multiple complaints with the city website and with the DPW directly, and still have some concerns. Number one, I think what we're running over there is a large-scale science experiment in our DPW yard, and within the smell range of many residents' homes. I don't think there's a lot of controls on this process, and I don't think that they actually know how to contain the smell. It's decided to, the business has decided to experiment with adding food waste to compost, and they're still trying to get it right, and we're the guinea pigs. So, you know, maybe it was manageable when it was just Wixom, but now that it's U of M and Ann Arbor, a city 8 times our size, how will you guys measure that Spurt is getting this under control? How will you know, as our leaders, that they have a handle on this? 2, I'm concerned that the packaging that the composting facility in Ann Arbor will not accept. Ask Spurt why the Ann Arbor U of M compost comes here. They have a compost facility in Ann Arbor. They won't take it because the packaging doesn't break down. And to get it to break down, it requires heat, which we don't have the capability to do here. So I'm just curious how council will be able to oversee that they have the right recipe to make sure that this breaks down correctly. And thirdly, if it doesn't break down, what do they do then? Chemicals, more nitrogen? What do you put into the pile that might cause runoff and excessive nitrates, or that you might have to add more grass? And all of those nitrates are really bad for the watershed. So we don't, as a city, have a great track record of managing, overseeing businesses that, have the potential to pollute. I'll just call out the Tri-Bar Adept situation where, we're still paying the price for the PFAS they released when we were overseeing them. So I just really think our city leaders, you got to ask them for data. And you need to provide the oversight to make sure this thing is being run correctly. And I'm interested in hearing what you guys will do to make sure that the smell's reduced and it's environmentally safe.
Thank you. Anybody else for the first call to the public?
Good evening. I'm Danny Pridmore. My partner and I live at 2416 Heddigham in Wixom. We've lived there like 25 years now. Pretty much echoing what most people say and think, the smell is there. That smell is like the smell of death or manure or whatever you want to call it. It's terrible. And why some people say they can't smell it where they are, I don't understand. Because we can smell it all over our neighborhood. I mean, it's in Hillsborough. It's really bad. Heddigham Boulevard, you know, that's our street, and it's just, it's like so overwhelming. You can't even sit outside. You can't even hardly enjoy working in your yard, cutting your grass, whatever, because the smell is just so bad. On top of that, after you get everything cleaned up, you can't even sit out on your deck and have a drink because the smell is still horrible. It smells like crap, absolute crap. It needs to be taken care of. There's no excuses. There should be nothing else to be said except that it stinks and it needs to be cleaned up. That's the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Anybody else?
Hello, Mayor, council members, administrative staff, and the administration. My name's Mike Dornan, and I reside at 2192 Heddigham Boulevard. Well, there's a lot of history here over at the DPW site. Goes back probably 40 years from our association and establishment as a founding member of ROSOC in 1994. We were part of a public-private partnership project of the year for the MRF facility on 8 Mile Road. We took some outstanding and aggressive steps like apparently you're doing, though, to learn about recycling initially. I thought I was going to come here tonight and get a sermon about the righteousness and virtues of composting. And I'm glad you did, by the way. Thank you very much. But it's hard for me to get my arms around this. I'm concerned about the capacity of the land over there. We 30 years ago, fast forward a little bit, I'm not going to go through each year, but I'll get out of your hair. But 30 years ago, we executed a contract with a little company in Zeeland, Michigan. And that company took over, and prior to that, our backyard over at the DPW was little more than a farm field and a composting yard where we even had burn piles, bonfires over at the DPW when they collected sticks throughout the community and grass clippings. We burned it. Well, my, how times have changed. We learned, and as we learned, Spurt grew. And our host fees increased from $20,000 to $30,000 to $40,000 to 60, and I don't know what they are offhand right now. But it's more than that, Tim? About 80, 100? So, and as our host fees increased, the size of Spurt grew. They grew and bigger. The piles grew taller, like pyramids out there. And and Spurt eventually became an industrial powerhouse that it is today, and established your headquarters as the city of Wixom on Charms Road. And we've had a great partnership over the years, I have to say that, with the exception of a couple of, what do you say, road bumps in the road. We had those too. But I'm concerned about your balancing act. Okay, composting is very much an art, as it is, well, it's very much an art, like cooking. And you've touched on it quite well. The temperature's got to be right. You got a windrow. You got air has to get at it. As a matter of fact, I visited when we were looking at all of this in 1984. I visited a compost garden in Portland, Oregon. Were you there, Tim? And the guy had just been busted by the state of Oregon because the piles got too large and they were catching on fire. And he was building some of the aeration beds, and I saw him on concrete, PVC pipes, and a bunch of holes drilled in them. And we asked the guy, we said it was kind of a Rube Goldberg operation, what he did when the piles caught on fire. He said, well, by golly, I just cover them up and get to it when I can, the fire, that is. But at some point, the law of diminishing marginal returns at your site is going to be triggered. You're going to, perhaps, and I don't want to be a doomsday kind of person, but the law of diminishing marginal returns turns into the law of diminishing profits. And the hassle, the amount of time and resources that the city manager and the city administration will have to put into dealing with complaints, and the amount of time and resources, hopefully not, but as a practical matter, it's true, that Spurt will have to deal with in the form of buying new equipment. It's damn expensive.
Mr. Norton, you're at 6.5 minutes already, so.
All right. Equipment, hiring employees, dealing with complaints. You got to ask yourself at a certain point whether it's worth it to get involved in the mixing of. And I don't know. I've got to just take your word for it. I came in here this evening thinking that food waste was the issue, and that we were getting bombarded, like Ken said, okay, by the massive dump of food waste from all our neighbors. And I don't know what your service area is, but I got a feeling that they're driving that blasted food waste up from Ann Arbor. That's 35 miles away, and you've got an elliptical shaped radius that's goes from the south to the southeast in communities, I would imagine, Farmington Hills, Ann Arbor, Southfield, okay? And at some point, the capacity of that yard's going to suffer. And we could get into leachate, that's a whole other story about concentration, high concentrations of chlorophyll turning into nitrates and whatnot. Kathy Gronsky.
Mr. Dolan?
So that's it. I
Ms. Burns?
appreciate it.
Okay.
I hope everybody has a lovely Thanksgiving. And after dinner on Thanksgiving Day, I want you to take your turkey carcass and your sweet potato skins and go to the garage and put them in the garbage can. Don't put them in the goddamn doggone, don't put them in the yard waste bin.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Anybody else for the first call to the public?
Well, how do I follow that up?
Name and address.
Yes, my name is Luca Budimir. I live at 2496 Headingham Boulevard. And we moved here about 5 years ago, my wife and I, and now our growing families, 3 boys. Our kids love to play in the summers here. It's a nice, quiet community, great place to raise children. And I'll be honest with you, I'm actually neighbors with Ken. If you look here, I think we can count about 7 or 8 our subdivision members here on a Tuesday night. So I literally just got off work and would prefer to see my children awake as opposed to being here. Instead, I felt it was very necessary to stand in front of you guys and let you guys know that what we are smelling is real. To send my kids out, our boys are actually like, Dad, I don't want to go outside. It stinks. You know, this is summers here in Michigan. I mean, it doesn't get nicer than that around here. It's a real thing. All of us here can definitely attest to that. And I'm going to be really honest. We are actually looking at a house in Milford now for reasons like this. Obviously, this is not how like our house appreciated. We love where we live, but where does it go from here? This gentleman mentioned that they're planning on expanding this area, right? So with expansion, I'm going to guess there's going to be more of this. As I said, this is just not how we want our property value to grow. This is not, I don't want my children telling me that they don't want to go outside because of the smell in our neighborhood. And this has not happened in the prior 4 years. This has been the first year, and this summer has been the first time. And enough for us to all be here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for the first call to the public? For agenda items?
Hello, Bob Goronsky, 2448 Headingham Boulevard. So just a couple things. I thought a couple of really good points were made by council. I wasn't aware that it was hinted that every 9 months we seem to come back with this issue. Actually wasn't aware that this issue that's happened more than once, and it's been ongoing. It's kind of interesting to hear that. And I think a good question was also asked by a council member about the timeline not exactly adding up here. Right? I mean, the smell's real. I won't repeat what everybody said. I'm, about mile and a half south of the yard. When the wind's out of the north, it smells. It smells bad. And the timeline not necessarily adding up, I think as council members and mayor, I think you need to keep that in mind, right? I think initially when you came up, there was a lot of talk about, this increase in volume that happened in September, but the complaints started before that. And if they've been happening, 9 months over, every 9 months, it sounds like they've been happening for a while. So let's keep that in mind. It's not it's not just something that's just came up. And I think that was a very good comment that was made, and I think timeline, you know, somebody needs to look at that a little bit more. And also, you know, why wait until, you know, we smell it and the complaints start rolling in to do something? Like, let's get proactive on this. This is just not good. And just a couple other things for you, I think for you all to consider and council, you know, why are we taking in why are we taking in food waste from Ann Arbor? Exactly. Really? Ann Arbor's got their own yard. They've got probably a lot more resources than we do. Let Ann Arbor handle their own stuff. We don't need their food stuff, their food waste here. I suspect that if we didn't have Ann Arbor's coming in, we probably wouldn't have the issue. And the BCI bags, you know, if the reason Ann Arbor doesn't want to take their food waste is because of the BCI bags, well, what makes our yard? Why is that good for our yard? How does that work in our yard? Right? If it takes heat to break down a BCI bag and to get the compost to work properly, how do we ensure that we have that mix and that it's working properly? Based on what I'm smelling, it's not working properly. And I guess the last comment I'd like to make is, you know, rats and rodents, right? I don't know how anybody could reasonably think that this isn't going to be a magnet for rats and rodents. It just seems like, you know, that's one large rat buffet going on there. And I can't imagine that that's going to be controllable for long. Like I said, I'm about 1.5 miles south. Haven't seen any rats or rodents yet, but we'll be on the lookout for that. But again, I can't imagine that that is controllable long term. So I'd really like to understand how, you know, they or anybody would control that. So just a couple things for you to consider. Appreciate the opportunity to make comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anybody else for a call to the public?
Sharon Spolsky, 2112 Hedingham. I live more closer to Maple Road, and I have smelled the smell. As my son said, he checked his foot 10 times. I go, it's not dog poop. Kept thinking he stepped in poop outside in the yard. The first I heard about putting food waste in the compost bags wasn't until this spring. I feel I'm pretty up to reading on city information. I'm on our HOA. I was alarmed, actually, because I'm a teacher, and I teach about composting, and I was like, whoa, wait, we're saying we can put fats in there now? Like, I literally teach the kids, no fats go in compost. So I started doing some research, and I found out that it's usually a rule of thumb not to put fats like meats into a compost pile. I agree. This is a new kind of composting. It is important, but I'm hoping that our city has done their homework and the research into keeping our waterways safe as well as our community clean and smelling nice and not terrible, like dog poop. As you know, in the past, we've had problems with polluting the Huron River watershed with PFAS. And it's noted in this article that I have from the EPA, other communities that compost food waste have had unintended consequences through increased nutrient pollution from composting facilities which went into their local waterways. I can leave you a copy of this if you'd like. Besides the terrible smell put out by the area of compost at our DPW, I hope the city does their homework to be sure we are not having the same problem with polluting our drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for the first call to the public? All right, and I encourage all of those residents, it sounds like everybody lives on Hedingham here, to take up Mr. Whitley's offer and go down to Spurt and see how things are run over there. It is quite fascinating to understand the science behind it. My wife and I did it last fall. It was pretty fascinating, actually. So I encourage you all to take up his offer on that. With that, I'll close the first call to the public. And we have one set of minutes tonight, the regular city council meeting minutes of November 12th, 2024. Do I have a motion for approval? Support. All right, have a motion to approve and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda is correspondence. We have 2 items of correspondence tonight: Downtown Wixom Road Safety Audit Findings Report and the approved PDA regular meeting schedule for 2025. And Mr. Dornan, the RSA report, is that going to be put on to, can I say Mr. Dornan?
Flashback.
Wow, flashback. I've been on council too long. I've been on council too long. Wow, Mr. Brown. Sorry about that. Will that be posted on the city website for people to take a look at?
The RSA finding?
We could.
Yeah, we absolutely could. I hadn't necessarily planned to, but sure,
I checked it
we could do that.
tonight. I didn't see it yet, but I knew it was on our agenda.
It wasn't on our radar to actually do that, but it's a great idea. We can put it on there.
Yeah, it was pretty fascinating. All right. With that comes to the city manager reports. Do we have any questions on the quarterly investment and budget report from June 2024? Questions? How about the departmental reports from October 2024? Any questions? All right, with that, we move on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of the unfinished business. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. We move to the first call of the public, and let's go to unfinished business. There is none tonight. And new business.
Oh, I'm sorry, can I ask a question before we get into new business? Were we going to do some follow-up questions for Mr. Whitley? And if we are, when was that going to happen?
You do it during your comments at the end.
Oh, okay, all right.
You have follow-up questions?
If you don't mind hanging around.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, new business, item number 1 is a recommendation to review, accept, and file the fiscal year 2023-2024 financial audit. Do we have a motion?
Support.
We have a motion support. All those, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next, new business item is item number 2, recommendation to approve a 10-year Michigan Uniform Video Service Local Franchise Agreement with Comcast Cable Communications LLC, a Delaware company doing business as Comcast, and the continuation of the city's membership in the Western Oakland County Cable Communications Authority for the duration of the agreement, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. Do I have a motion?
Support.
All right.
As you just
McGee.
noted, it's basically this agreement is before you tonight to renew a 10-year franchise agreement with Comcast. The city franchise fees would be 5%, the PEG fees would be 0.5%, and that would go to WOCA. If you have any other questions, let me know.
All right. Any questions from Ms. McGee?
Thank you. I just have one question. I see it says, if council does not act on the franchise agreement with Comcast, it'll automatically be considered approved, so.
Correct. It's,
Yeah.
That's new.
Yes, it's a formality.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Most things don't work.
We didn't want to slip it by you. We wanted you to have the opportunity to know what was happening. That's all, right? So,
And the last contract was also 10 years, if I recall.
The last one was 15.
Oh, 15?
I think it was 15.
Any other questions for Ms. McGee? All right. We have a motion for a recommendation to approve the 10-year Michigan Uniform Video Service Local Franchise Agreement with Comcast Cable Communications LLC, a Delaware company doing business as Comcast, and the continuation of the city's membership in the Western Oakland County Cable Communications Authority for the duration of the agreement, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Last item of business, number 3, is a recommendation to award the municipal complex duct cleaning services contract to Ducts of Southeast Michigan of Livonia in the amount of $32,800. By the motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right. Mr. Sikma.
Thank you, Member Resnick and City Council. Yeah, what we have here, we went out to bid for duct cleaning at the municipal facilities. We checked on all of the buildings, DPW, fire, City Hall here, police, and the community center and library for that purpose of just cleaning them. A number of them have not been cleaned in a number of years, and there are a few ducts in the city that have not been cleaned at all. And we feel that it's necessary, and we think that it's a good time to do that just after our construction at the police and the community center, and now next week, the building department. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to getting all of those ducts clean here in the next month or so. When we went out to bid for that, we had a number of different folks that attended the pre-bid meeting, and the three here responded. And looking at that, the reason the duct bid is $38,000. The fire department is not going to be cleaning this time. We were looking at budgetary purposes for that part. They had gotten theirs previously cleaned within the last year and a half. So we feel that, and we checked with the chief on that, and we will not be cleaning their ducts at this time. With that, I'll be open for questions, if you have any.
Questions for Mr. Sikma?
Yeah, Drew looks like he's got a comment first, if you want to take him.
I do. I just wanted to add one note.
No, I wasn't saying you could talk.
Oh, I
Let's see
apologize. No, you're right.
Deputy Mayor Resnick would let you talk.
I'll call him.
Yeah, I just start going. I apologize. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Oh,
you
no.
tell me. I was just
Okay.
teasing.
I'll make it fast. No, I just wanted to say, I know this seems like a, sort of random to some degree, but I wanted to give Director Sikma some credit. This is an item that I've had staff members specifically in the building department ask us about, like, hey, when are we doing this? And, because it's something you need to do every few years. So I just wanted to give some credit and just say that this is something from a staff perspective that has been brought up before, of asking when we'd be doing something. So I was excited to see this was moving forward.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Smith.
Thank you again. I'm just wondering if, did the fire department use any of these three? And how did, go ahead.
Yes, they have. It was below the 10,000 when you're just doing the one
Right, yeah, I
department.
get that.
And so they did use, it's a different company that we're recommending, but we are going with the low bid at this point, so.
Sure, yeah, I just wonder how it compares. So they use one of these three, which
Yep.
would have been probably more.
Very reasonable.
If they had waited. I mean, it was a year and a half ago, I'm just saying.
No, there was some reasons for them to do it. They had just gone through their construction program, so we did that one ahead of time. And now we're going through construction here at City Hall and the community center, so we're gonna clean these now. So it was just after the new construction, if you remember, at the fire department, so.
I get all that. I'm just wondering who they chose, how that would have compared, if price-wise, it sounds like it probably would have been cheaper if they went with one of these other two that were higher, but, we don't have crystal balls. I just wanted to know, and now I know.
And it was the time to do it at that point, so. One other thing that when we do that, we replace the filters every quarter here with the HVAC systems. We have a contract with that, so we do that, periodically through the year anyway, but this just cleans them all, and then we'll replace the filters after that.
Councilmember Behrman.
Perhaps I missed it, but when was the last time everything was cleaned?
I don't have that record. It's been that long.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
So it's overdue.
My only comment.
Before Tim, yes.
My only comment is, do you know what the frequency should be, and should we be putting this on as a
We're gonna put
budget
it on like
agenda?
every 3 years.
Every 3 years, yeah. That's about what I do at home. Very good. Thank you. So we have a recommendation to award the municipal complex duct cleaning services contract to Ducts of Southeast Michigan, of Livonia, Michigan, in the amount of $32,800. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the second call of the public. I won't read the rules again, but second call of the public, come up and speak anything on your mind. Do we have any takers for the second call to the public?
Good evening.
State your name and address, sir, for the record.
It's Dale Brannigan, 1748 North Wixom Road. Really, I want to address the council. I know working with Tim, there's an interest to put a sidewalk in front of my house along Wixom Road. You're looking for easement to do that. And it's on the surface, it's probably a great idea. I use the sidewalk on the west side of Wixom Road all the time. And I know there's a little challenge on getting across Wixom Road because it's in front of my house, it's 50 miles an hour. And it's only 2 lanes, and Wixom Road is pretty busy these days. And I've lived here for over 30 years, and I regularly pull into my driveway at about 25 miles an hour. And if there's pedestrians on that sidewalk, I fear for their safety. And that's my only objection to it. And I know Tim has been we've been working together, offering ideas and so forth. But I understand this project is moving along, and for those that have not consented, the property will be eminent domain. So I just wanted to offer some input here for the council and the mayor purpose. It's a tough situation, and I know safety is the focus, and I don't have a solution necessarily, but I just wanted to share that I have not seen something that I'm interested in approving at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else for the second call to the public? Seeing none, we'll close the second call to the public and go on to city manager's comments. City Manager Brown.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A couple of things. First off, the Wixom DDA was recently recognized by the Michigan Downtown Association, the MDA, at their annual conference for the award for Best Promotional Event for the Wixom Block Party. As I think we know, it was a very successful event here in Wixom this past year and in other years. And it was great to see the DDA being recognized by the Michigan Downtown Association and their peers in that organization. And we look forward to more exciting stuff coming from the DDA, including another block party in 2025. So congratulations to the DDA for that. The second thing I had in there was a nice email of thanks from a resident that thanked the DPW for the curbside leaf collection that is provided as a city service. I won't go into the details of it, but he was very, very complimentary about the way that the work was done and the fact that it's done regardless of the weather, and it's something that he much appreciates as a resident. And I just wanted to say that's very unusual service that's provided. Most cities have gotten out of the business of doing curbside leaf collection because it's very difficult from an administrative standpoint and a variety of other challenges that goes along with it. This city council continues to prioritize that as a city service that they know people appreciate and value. I just wanted to show you some feedback from a resident that was saying exactly that. And I wanted to say thank you to the DPW, Tim, and everybody that works in the DPW for continuing to provide that service, which is not a usual service these days on the menu for most cities. So job well done by the DPW, and we appreciate the feedback from the gentleman for thanking the DPW for the work that they do. The next thing is the work anniversaries. We've got people celebrating anywhere from 1 year up to 23 years. Jim Bird in the aforementioned DPW is a foreman in the DPW, as you likely all know. Congratulations to him and everybody else that's celebrating a work anniversary in December. That's all I had this evening. If there's something we can address, let us know.
Right. Assistant City Manager.
I have no additional comments.
I recognize this. Very good. Let's move on to council comments. Councilman Sharp.
Ooh, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I've got a few things. I just wrote some notes down about the spurt thing, and I don't think we need to debate them all. I think there'll be plenty of that going on outside of this meeting. I assume city administration and Mr. Whitley will be working on addressing the multiple residents' concerns. But a couple thoughts. One is, first, quit taking Ann Arbor food. That'd be an easy answer, but I'm not sure that's the problem. We're not really sure whether it is or not, so I think we probably need to define what the problem is first. It sounds like that's really difficult to define what the problem is. I asked about the nature of the smell. I live well within the radius of Hedingham Boulevard off of Charms Road, and I really haven't noticed it recently. I have noticed it in the past, but interesting to me that the gentleman who spoke said he didn't know it had been a problem in the past. So maybe it hasn't been a problem on Hedingham, so something new's happened on Hedingham. Are we even sure it's spurt? Is there a dead pile of bodies or something behind their house? I mean, I know what death smells like, and I know what dog dew smells like, and what I know spurt to smell like is neither one of those. So has anybody gone, I'm not looking for answers, I'm just speaking rhetorically. Has anybody gone to the sites and the complaints? They're all on Hedingham Road, which is weird. And it sounds like it's new. So maybe something else is going on that we haven't even thought about yet. So I'm not sure that quit taking Ann Arbor food is the answer. But then I wrote down, is it the sewer system? I don't know, but we don't know if we don't know what the actual smell is. I don't know how you measure that. You probably have to have a panel of smell experts to go, stand by for a few nights a month or something to see what's going on. I did like one point though, how will council manage the spurt smell oversight? How often are we going to have to talk about this in here before we do something that's more controlling and proactive rather than reactive? Because I feel like we're being reactive right now. These are all rhetorical, so I don't need, we don't need to discuss my comments. I don't really have any questions per se for Bill. I think I understand the system. I think maybe we need to give it a little more time, but you know what? That's what we said 18 months ago. Let's give it a little more time, and here we are again. So maybe now's the time to stop giving it a little more time and do something else. Okay, enough on spurt. I did want to comment on DPW, nice progress on the easement, the one that we did get, but very interesting from Mr. Brannigan, his point about the easement on Wixom Road. Frankly, I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point. How do we ensure safety of pedestrians? But we do that all over Wixom Road right now, both sides, up and down. It's 50 miles an hour everywhere, and we have driveways everywhere. So I'm sure there's a way around that, but thank you for coming to, I have to look up your address and see, because I'm really into the bicycling and the safety paths, so as well as many other things, spurt. But I need to see, but thank you for coming and sharing your view. I do appreciate it. I imagine most of the council does. I want to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, Mayor Beagle's not here today, but I will say for Rob Smiley's benefit, go Buckeyes. Thank you.
Gross. Councilwoman Groden Fox.
Well, I gotta say, you sure got the police chief's attention with your comment.
Which one?
About the bodies. He looked right up and I was like,
Could be turkey carcasses, I don't know.
Probably on Facebook.
it was just kind of fun to watch your expression. But anyway, so I would like to thank Marilyn and her staff for all the work that went into the audit. I know that's a lot of work, so thank you. Congratulations to the DDA, and yes, Tim, your staff do a great job on the leaf pickup. I mean, everything, the snow plowing, everything they do. That is a great program. I'm glad we have it. I know takes a lot of time, there's a lot of cost involved, but I value that, and I know all my neighbors talk about it. We're an envy of other communities, I know, so I appreciate that. And then, thank you and congratulations to all those that are celebrating anniversaries, and also happy Thanksgiving. So, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Councilman Gottschalk.
Thank you. I guess just to clarify the record, because 9 months was said and then people kind of took that up like that's.
That was an unfortunate.
That's
shooting
what
to
it
that
is.
right there, yeah.
And then 18 months was just said. I want to clarify that it's been quite some time. I do agree that it's new, that it's the Hillsborough neighborhood. I've smelled it, and I think it was mid-October, and I just pulled up a ruler on satellite to see. I'm just under 2 miles from the driveway. And similarly, I literally pulled over my car to check the bottom of my shoes because I thought I stepped in dog poop and got in my car, and that wasn't the case. And so it's making its way, and it happened twice, all the way to Loon Lake Elementary, which is a larger issue. That's a considerably further distance than the Hillsborough neighborhood. I'm willing to give the grace to get it figured out, and I know there's plans to improve the system over there, and I understand that those can be a benefit, and that I think is the right move. In the meantime, I hope we can get it figured out. It's not, some of the comments were death. It smells like, when I called Mr. Sigma, it smells like the one resident mentioned when someone puts down new wood chips and the manure smell that comes with that. That's what it was. It's not dead bodies, please. There aren't any behind there, no. But it's not death to my scent. It is manure, and I don't know that is food waste. And it sounds like the food waste predates this by a bit of time, at least from Ann Arbor was, did we say 2017? Or
We started accepting food in 2017.
Yeah.
The City of Ann Arbor program was July of 2023.
Okay.
University of Michigan was December of 2023.
Okay, and so that's a year's time before this became an issue. And we can't say it's the City of Wixom thing because there's no way we have that many residents putting in that much food waste above and beyond what U of M has been putting in for the last year. And the City of Ann Arbor, which is considerably larger. So I think we need to get to the bottom of this and take it seriously, and I think we all do take it seriously. But that, I know from my personal experience, it's making it a lot further than just that little stretch of territory. So hopefully we can get it figured out until all the improvements are made over there. But I don't think it'd be the right move to start talking or threatening canceling contracts or what have you. I think the discussions about moving out of the city because of this are a quick jump to something that can hopefully be solved. So I would just urge everyone to kind of give it a few minutes to get figured out. And I hope, for my sake, I mean, it was an hour and a half before we got to business. And not to say this was a waste of time, but when we're getting this at the end of November and complaints started 4 months ago, I wish our city could take care of stuff on its own before it gets to people getting pissed off and coming to city council meetings and it rising to that level, because then it does turn into a waste of everybody's time. People could be at home, people could be doing other things. We shouldn't have to sit here when there are multiple levels of staff to get this addressed. So that's my hope for the future. I want to see stuff like this stop rising to our level after 4 months. It should be dealt with much quicker. There should be more information put out. This could have been an email or a report, not an hour and a half of, well, taking out the audit, an hour's worth of complaining. That's what annoyed me most from tonight. Thank you.
Councilman Smiley.
Thank you, because of Mayor Resnick, Deputy Mayor Resnick. A couple things. First of all, I'm glad we cleared up that 18 months versus 9 months thing. Just getting the facts right is important. That said, 18 months, for someone who's gone through this, it probably feels shorter, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's back, here's this problem again. Hopefully it's gonna be much longer than 18 months for the next time anything happens. Mr. Whitley, I'm glad you're here. I appreciate that you, kind of took some slings and arrows tonight, both from us and the crowd. That just goes to would you say you care, and I love that you live in this, community as well. That goes a long way with, getting grace, which I like the idea of as well, with, working on this problem, solving it. You've always been on top of it. But it does have a recurrence that's a concern. And I don't think anybody here likes hearing folks say they want to move away or they're really looking at getting out of here. That just goes, ugh, we hate that. But it helps understand, helps us understand this is, a big deal to, some of our residents. So with all that said, just a couple of questions, and you be very brief about them. One of the folks mentioned, a packaging issue, something about not breaking down. Is there anything to that? Is that something? There's no.
Mr. Whitley, if you could go to the mic, please.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
There's no concern with certified compostable packaging not breaking down in commercial composting sites.
Okay, good, that's fine,
yeah.
that's good enough, yeah. Someone asked about oversight. Mr. Sigma works with you pretty closely. I mean, he's kind of.
We're in regular communication.
So there's oversight. If you're doing something weird, we'd catch on eventually, right, Tim?
His office window looks out at every truck that comes in and out of our facility.
Right,
He's got a great idea of what's going on.
Good.
And his staff is dumping leaves and brush at our facility on a daily basis.
That's what I thought, and that's just why I would like to have heard some of them hear this, but hopefully they'll read the minutes later on or watch the video. One final question. It was suggested, you're kind of pressing the capacity of that facility, pushing the limits of it maybe. Is there anything to that, or is that something we should talk about or be concerned about?
No, I mean, we have no goal or plans to go significantly above the volume that we're currently receiving at that site. If there's a growth plan for Spurt, it would be at a different piece of property, a different municipality. Okay. Right, the volume that is coming into the site this November, that's good for us.
All right, gotcha. You feel like you got this solved? Like this is not going to be a problem again? I mean, without a crystal ball and something wacky happening, I mean, you understand everything that's happened and we've got it.
We understand what's happening in our piles. It's not solved on November 27th. It will take us a couple weeks to get through our piles. We're not going to be here talking about this next November. I can assure you of that.
I hope. All right, thanks again for being here and for
Thank you.
taking all the questions.
Yep.
Just a few other little items. Unmodified opinion. It's such for being the highest level that we could achieve with Plant Moran, every year it's like, really, you can't have a better name than that, but that's what it is, a rose by any other name, that kind of thing. Anyway, well done to all of us, really, for having an unmodified opinion. Other than that, everybody please have a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope to see everyone at the tree lighting a week from Friday. That's always fun. Hopefully the weather's nice. Thank you, sir.
You? Councilman Becker.
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to address that I wish all the residents that were here would have stayed throughout the entire meeting, and I wish they would have had a chance to hear a response possibly. And I don't believe that it's a waste when any resident takes time out of their evening to come here and tell us what's going on. And if we need to stay here for 2 hours to listen to residents, I'm perfectly fine with that. I do agree with prior council members' comments that that there was a breakdown with our city management. There's no reason why the complaint started in early August, and we're talking about it over 3 months later, and the problem, just last week there were still people complaining about the smells. You've had 3 months to fix it. It needs to be fixed. I think the city values our partnership with Spur, and I want that partnership to continue. And I think clearly you've grown a good company that, I mean, you want to give back to the community, and you are giving back to the community. And I think it's a good partnership for the city that we can dump our waste there, and we're not paying the dump fees and all those other things. But we got to be proactive, and we got to fix the problem so we're not listening to residents complain again. And there's zero reason why it took more than 90 days. There's zero reason why residents had to complain in the first place. I'm sure Tim at DPW and you at Spur could smell that there was an issue, and it should have been fixed before the residents complained. That being said, I do think the complaint process needs to be ironed out if it is going to be continuing. I don't know. I think there needs to be a central location where these complaints are going. If it's going to be going to Spur directly, that's fine, but is that information getting shared with us? The report we got today for the complaints was complaints to the city manager's office and DPW, but I'm sure Spur has had their own complaints, and was that included on the list that we got from you today?
There are people that made complaints to multiple locations, and I'm confident that we got all of the complaints that we were aware of.
I just think that possibly we need to streamline it and make sure it's being transparent to all parties involved. Lastly, with Spur would be the habitat. Has anybody looked at the habitat? I mean, well, I'm not saying dead bodies, but you know, the weather's been different this summer. There's been more water. I know we talked about, or Councilman Sharp said sewer. I don't know. I mean, mid-summer I did walk the trail out there. I didn't smell anything. I live right across the street from the neighborhood that's been complaining. I haven't smelled it, but that doesn't mean what the other residents are smelling is acceptable either. So I think we just need to get it right, be proactive. I want to continue the partnership, but that's clearly on you guys to make sure that we can. Lastly, the sidewalk issue. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan when we talked about it the last time, still not personally myself. I know that was your one easement left, possibly, but regardless, until we figure out the sidewalk easement, I think we need to fix the sidewalk at least to Charms Road. I don't know why that hasn't been done yet. We have the easement in front of that house. That sidewalk needs to go in. That needs to be a priority while you're figuring out eminent domain or whatever we're going to do with everything else, the bridge. There's zero reason why we haven't finished the sidewalk to Charms Road. I'm watching the kids in the morning ride bikes across that front yard in front of that old farmhouse, and then crossing the crosswalk there. We can finish that piece there. We can get that one. You want to do eminent domain? Go after that one piece that's gapping right now. You know, I'm talking about where divots down. You know, fix those issues before we start spending $1 million on this other sidewalk. I think those are bigger issues. And speaking to the traffic, the last couple mornings when I've been taking my daughter to school at Sarah Banks, I've noticed a lot of increased police activity. People pulled over on Maple Road, people pulled over on Wixom Road, people pulled over on Charms Road. I noticed that. I appreciate that. I hope the residents can see that and they're slowing down. But obviously they're not. They're just getting pulled over. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, happy Thanksgiving. I won't put my turkey in the compost either to make sure I don't get yelled at.
Or its carcass.
Yeah.
All right. I also just want to echo some of my fellow councilmen's comments on the timeliness of action taken. I think we need to address those things a lot sooner, right? And they shouldn't be coming 4 months, 5 months later to council. So let's work on that. I also think from Mr. Whitley, a couple things that may help is a good informational piece, either on your website or something you can share with the city on what are the facts about food waste, right? Where is it coming from? Which communities? What's the approximate volume of it? And, you know, has it increased or decreased over the last calendar year? Those things might help set the record straight, as well as whether or not those compostable containers or whatever are truly hazardous, or there's differences in leachate with those types of materials. So I think an informational piece might help a lot with that. I will be absent next meeting. I think, Madam Clerk, I already let you know that. I will not be here. I will see everybody at the tree lighting though. And happy Thanksgiving. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting closed. Thank you. Thank you, members of the public and everybody else.